We will never know what will happen to us when we die until we see it with our own eyes. We're just passengers who ride on a train and don't know where it's taking us. I was one of those passengers. But in 1975, I spontaneously left my body and had my first out-of-body experience. Since then, I started experimenting with my mind, spent hundreds of hours outside my body on the other side of physical life, and meticulously recorded everything I observed. Says German writer and artist Jurgen Ziewe. Jurgen Ziewe has been practicing traveling outside his body for almost 50 years. During this time, according to the writer, he managed to visit another dimension more than once, which people enter after death. Ziewe claims that we can visit that world while we are still alive. The writer talks about how he managed to do it. After one incident, he began to doubt the sanity of his mind. Jurgen was born in Hamburg in 1947. The boy had an undoubted talent for drawing, which helped him enroll in the local Academy of Arts. After receiving a diploma in design, the young man worked in several advertising agencies in Germany. His wife was a young Englishwoman. She missed her homeland very much. It was thanks to her persuasion that the decision to move was made. In 1975, Jurgen Ziewe moved to England with his wife. At first, he longed for his home and often thought about his mother, who remained in Germany. One day, on August 14, 1975, Jurgen Ziewe found himself near his mother's house. Coming closer to him through the garden, Jurgen saw a red beech tree, which his mother planted here 20 years ago. I don't remember this tree looking as beautiful as it did during this visit. I wanted to go up to him and touch his bark. But when I wanted to touch the beech tree, for a second, it seemed to me that I had no hands. They appeared before my eyes, as if out of thin air. I ran my hand over the bark of the tree and wondered why I had never noticed such life and strength in it before. Then I suddenly felt dizzy, and I decided to sit down by a tree to rest for a while. But when I looked down, horror seized me, because I had no legs, says Jurgen Ziewe. As in the case of the arms, the legs appeared a moment later in front of the astonished Jurgen Ziewe. He understood that something so strange was happening to him that there was no way to rationalize what was happening. Suddenly, Jurgen Ziewe realized that at this very moment he should be at his home in England. How could he have ended up in his hometown, which he had recently left? Jurgen Ziewe recalled that he had a severe panic attack. While he was thinking about how he could get back to England quickly, he felt dizzy again. And the next moment, Jurgen Ziewe woke up in his own bed. Jurgen immediately woke up his wife Julia and enthusiastically informed her, "You won't believe it. I was just in my mother's garden." Ziewe expected Julia to be surprised by his words, but she muttered irritably, "You dreamed it all. Go to bed." He tried to convince his wife of the reality of what had happened at breakfast, but she was skeptical. Excerpt from the book Multidimensional Man by Jurgen Ziewe. After this incident, I began to doubt the sanity of my mind. I felt like there was something wrong in my head. On the same day, I went to the library, got a medical reference book, and studied everything about the brain tumor, but I didn't find anything there that could relate to my case. Then I visited the psychology section and studied books about dreams. But even here, I didn't get an answer to my question. Finally, I came across a book by Robert Monroe called Journey Outside the Body. This man is known as an astral traveler who was one of the first to discover the out-of-body experience to the world. Before I continue my story, I must make a small digression. Let's find out more about the man who was able to convince Ziewe that his experience of out-of-body travel is absolutely normal. It is very interesting. Who is Robert Monroe? Robert was born in 1915 in Lexington, a large city in Kentucky. He was the third child in an intelligent family. His father taught at a college, and his mother served as a nurse at the city hospital. Since childhood, the boy loved physics, chemistry, and mathematics. So after graduating from college, he easily entered the Ohio University Faculty of Engineering. After getting a job at the New York branch of the famous Radio Corporation Mutual Broadcasting System, the young man not only monitored the correct operation of the equipment, but also wrote scripts for science and entertainment programs. In the middle of the last century, the possibility of teaching a person in a dream was considered a fashionable trend in psychology. For this purpose, the effects of sound and electromagnetic waves on the brain of the sleeper were used. A young engineer became interested in this problem, created his own version of a sound wave generator, and began experimenting. Unable to pay for volunteers, Monroe became his own test subject. It was during one of these experiments that his first astral body came out. Robert was so scared by what had happened that after the end of the session, he immediately turned to a doctor he knew, telling him about what had happened. A full medical examination was carried out, but no harm to health, either physical or psychological, was found. At first, Monroe was afraid to continue the experiments, but the memories of out-of-body travel teased the researcher. Finally, he decided to resume the experiments. Robert Monroe wrote that during his experiments, he managed to establish contact with the indigenous inhabitants of other worlds. They were mostly humanoids, although they didn't look human at all. Their faces resembled those of lizards with scaly skin, a flattened nose, and elongated jaws full of sharp teeth. They are the same inhabitants of the Earth as we are. They are intelligent, and their intelligence is equal to or even superior to human intelligence. Lizards live in the fourth dimension, which is inaccessible to human perception. We do not see them, even though they are among us. Moreover, they have long controlled humanity, as humans are a source of food for them. They feed on our negative emotions: fear, hatred, despair, anxiety, resentment, anger. The impressions of what he saw during out-of-body travel were so strong that Robert continued to work in the same direction. The result of this activity was the book, Travels Outside the Body, which made such a strong impression on the artist Ziewe. In the wake of interest in the voiced problem, Monroe organizes a research institute named after himself, finds sponsors, and continues experiments. Now a huge number of volunteers dream of going to another dimension and getting their own out-of-body experience. Later, the researcher wrote 2 more voluminous volumes, Long Journeys and The Final Journey, devoted to the same problem. Monroe developed his own system of sound stimulation of brain activity, which are still successfully used today to reduce stress and treat insomnia. The special services were even interested in the experiments, hoping to get a super soldier with the help of audio stimulation. Robert Monroe passed away in 1995. He wrote a lot about energy parasites living in other dimensions of the earthly world and feeding on low human emotions. He believed that only spiritual development could protect humanity. The Monroe Institute is still working, but today it is more of a pleasure attraction than a research center. For a certain amount paid for the entrance ticket, anyone can visit the acoustic chamber and even try to make contact with an intelligent race of the fourth dimension on their own. And now, back to Jurgen Ziewe. Robert Monroe's experiment seemed so unusual to Jurgen Ziewe that he decided to repeat this experience at all costs. Ziewe recalled his out-of-body experience every day. Every day, after a sound night's sleep, he lay on his back, focusing his attention on the center of his head. Weeks passed like this, but Jurgen Ziewe could not repeat this unusual experience. The wait dragged on for 4 months, but then it happened. At the end of December 1975, Jurgen Ziewe woke up in the morning and tried to fall asleep again, keeping his attention on the center of his head. He dozed off and had a vivid dream. In it, Ziewe was standing in the middle of the room and talking to someone. Suddenly, he realized that he was dreaming. A moment after that, I vaguely felt my body lying in bed. Being inside my body, I somehow disconnected, and now I can just get up and separate from it. I tried to do it, and I succeeded. I started looking around and saw the sun rising through the window. Then everything went dark. It scared me. The next moment, I noticed with disappointment that I had woken up. Now I was looking with my own physical eyes, recalled Jurgen Ziewe. Jurgen Ziewe tried to repeat this experience on a daily basis. Leaving his body, he began to try to consciously transfer himself to certain places on Earth. First, Jurgen Ziewe decided to visit his English neighbors. The experiment was a success. The next time, Ziewe concentrated on his home in Germany and visited it again, seeing his mother and grandmother in it. Sometimes some kind of force took Jurgen Ziewe to unfamiliar places. For example, one day he found himself in the middle of the street. A girl in a green dress ran past Ziewe, and behind him he saw a woman who was looking at a shop window. The square was visible in the distance, but all this did not help Jurgen Ziewe determine his location. One day, Jurgen Ziewe found himself in another deserted square in a large city that seemed abandoned. A cold wind blew garbage through the streets. Wandering through the deserted streets, Jurgen Ziewe suddenly realized that this place was beyond the physical world. Excerpt from the book Vistas of Infinity by Jurgen Ziewe. I decided that I was next to the physical plane, on a lower level. This deserted city reminded me of the equivalent of Hamburg on Earth. I felt a sinister presence in him. The ominous atmosphere here was too real to be Earth. Curiosity took hold of me. I wanted to find out what attracts people to this place and how they get here. Soon I noticed several dreary figures. I wondered if these people knew they were dead, because it was such an authentic replica of physical life, with nothing supernatural or unnatural about it. In another book, Multidimensional Man, Ziewe talks about the so-called tourism in other dimensions. I remember leaving my body shortly after I fell asleep, around midnight. All night, at least 6 hours, I walked around the city. It was as if I had walked out of the front door and into another dimension. The people I met along the way were still involved in earthly activities. The environment seemed very mundane, with only some new features that would set it apart from Earth. I decided to continue my visit, trying to learn more about the real nature of this dimension. I spent a lot of time there and managed to get valuable information. My research was conducted rationally, just as Earth scientists study events occurring on a physical level. I conducted my own experiments. It turned out that the power of my thoughts was much more obvious here. I could influence objects and events mentally. I enjoyed my stay in another dimension, as if I were on vacation on Earth. I was filled with joy and expectation of miracles. I had no desire to return to my physical self. There was a leisurely life here. It was friendly and peaceful. It really was a vacation destination, a super resort. It was possible to fulfill any dream here. Looking up, I felt like I was lifting off the ground and easily soaring into the starry, bottomless sky. When I went downstairs again, I saw a middle-aged couple walking towards me. They were different from other people, and I immediately recognized them as living sleepers, exploring the world with interest. It means that I am far from the only one alive who is able to enter the world of the dead. Jurgen Ziewe devoted his entire life to the study of non-physical spheres, territories of the afterlife. He is still doing this work. In his books, Jurgen Ziewe talks about meetings with the dead, including with his wife Julia's mother and his own mother. Jurgen Ziewe says that in almost 50 years of his research, he has not met a single scientist who would tell him that out-of-body travel is just a figment of his imagination. The artist's paintings are filled with such surreal reality that one can't help but wonder if they are reflections of landscapes and inhabitants of other dimensions. If we continue this thought, it is possible that truly talented, fantastic works of painting, literature, or cinema are also based on the travels of their authors to other worlds. An indirect confirmation of such statements is the story of how the main genius of 20th century Surrealism, Salvador Dali, created his paintings. They say that he fell asleep in an armchair with a teaspoon in his hands. When his hand involuntarily opened, the spoon would fall, and he would wake up from the clink before he could really fall asleep. What Dali saw on the verge of reality, he was in a hurry to sketch. Many art historians claim that the works of Ziewe and Dali overlap and have common roots. Our whole life is connected with death, which is always lurking somewhere in the background. But since we are used to seeing death as the end of life rather than a new beginning, we look at it with awe and fear. It would be useful for each of us to see death for what it really is. It is the greatest deception in our lives and represents only a temporary separation of paths with those we love. Jurgen Ziewe is convinced. What do you think about Jurgen Ziewe's experience? Write your opinion in the comments. Dear friends, thank you for watching my video to the end. If you liked it, please like it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's very important. Thank you, and have a nice day.